It's different from a Little Night Music because it's in a completely different genre, where Little Night Music belongs to the kind of romantic, bittersweet comedy kind of musical. Sweeney Todd is darker. The humour in Sweeney Todd is much darker, and it belongs to a whole tradition of melodrama and that kind of thing that came out of the 19th century. So the visual world that you're looking at is earlier than the period that we had Little Night Music set in, because that was the turn of the last century. This is kind of middle of the 19th century. It's more industrial, it's more in the city, whereas night music was small towns and countryside. This is big city, and a lot of the stuff in Sweeney Todd deals with people living on top of each other, with this very urban kind of gritty environment. So if Little Night Music was looking at the top strata of society, we're very much looking at the underbelly in Sweeney Todd. You find yourself laughing at things, and then I suppose only later you might question what you're actually laughing at. It does leave you thinking. It absolutely leaves you thinking, and there is a morality tale in there, but like all morality tales, like fairy tales, I suppose, the original root of fairy tales, they're very, very dark. But we still enjoy them, and children still enjoy them, and the capacity for people to enjoy horror, I suppose, or darkness, or bad things happening to bad people, and that's what we enjoy. It's the bad things happening to the bad people. It's not that he goes around, killing good people. It's about, he takes his revenge on the people who've done him wrong, and that's something that we all appreciate. And so, we share his victories as he ultimately gets revenge, but there is a cost, and that's the point. It's not amoral at all. It's it is a very strong morality tale, I suppose, at the end of the day. But for all of that, it's not preachy at all. You have 3, sometimes 4 separate stories happening at the same time, and so I think my job is to set up the one that's happening in that moment, and let that one catch your eye, and then while the other story happens, you kind of try and direct the audience over there, so that you have the sense that, oh, this is the one we'll watch, oh no, we need to be there, oh no, we need to be there, so that you try and guide the audience to, show them where those stories are happening, but ultimately the choice is then which story they're going to follow. It's like doing split screen on a movie. You have 3 things happening, and you can only focus on one of them at a time, I suppose. But they come together to form a whole. It's about the sum of its parts rather than the individual moments. So it does cause not problems, but you have to be creative with the solutions that you come up with, and you can't be too literal with some of those things, because there's one scene in Sweeney Todd where you have 2 separate journeys going through 2 separate parts of London, and one person staying exactly where they are. So it's kind of, so what we've done in how we've created the space, if we've created a really dynamic space in which, we can have something happening up here, something happening down there, something happening somewhere else, but you, the audience, can choose to watch whichever bit, I suppose. But we still honour each of those journeys. It's fun. That's the fun thing to do. So try and put those things together. But it is like, it's kind of like doing that, patting your head and rubbing your tummy. It can be a bit tricky when you're staging it, but then it's about the overall effect at the end of that. You can't ignore the class system that's going on in that society as well. And this is where the stage show differs from the film, in that the society is on stage because it's a chorus piece, and the chorus have a very strong identity all the way through the show, and it is about a society, and it is about a society that either allows bad things to happen or doesn't allow bad things to happen. And so, that's it's a much broader picture that you get than in the film. Well, it's one man's struggle against a system that's broken, essentially, and what we've done is we've Normally, I think the original period is around about 1830, 1840, but we've moved that later into the 19th century. So we're around about 1868, 1870, somewhere around there. So it's the end of people being transported to Australia, which is what happens to Sweeney. You know, we find that out at the beginning of the show. It's that period where, you know, people were still being hanged for very small crimes. Children were being transported. Children were still being hanged. It's a very barbaric time, although we think of the late 19th century as this great time of creation and industry and fabulous human achievement, which of course it was. But while the world still organized itself, there was still a very, very, very dark areas where people were just struggling to survive. So I put it later because I think from where we look, you know, if it's like if you set something in the 18th century, it's so remote from you and your own experience. But, you know, kind of end of the 19th century, that's something that we understand through, you know, a common knowledge. You know, it's over 100 years away, but it's only a couple of generations away if you think about it, you know. So I wanted to just bring it closer to us. But it was still lawless, you know, there was still a great deal of lawlessness, or the people making the laws, the lawmakers, weren't actually accountable. And that's what happens in Sweeney Todd. The judge is a figure who represents the hypocrisy that exists in society and the imbalance that happens in society between those who have and those who have not. There's this great line where those up above will serve those down below, and it's just great because you kind of look at some of those people who have power and you go, yeah, if you were in a pie, I'd eat you. Yeah, you know, there's a lot of dark humour in it. It's a lot of fun.